and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Mise Ma Passion, YouTube's premier channel about all things women's football. And match day number 12 at the FIFA Women's World Cup has just concluded with some very gripping and thrilling group action coming to the forefront here, as Group B and C went head to head to see who would finish in what position at the end of the day. And we're going to start off our coverage of the things that we learned from today's 4 matches with Japan versus Spain. And going into this game, both Japan and Spain had qualified for the knockout stage of the Women's World Cup and were just competing to see who would finish first and who would finish second, as this position would determine their opposition going into the round of 16 tie. Now, Japan lined up in a 3-4-3 formation and Spain lined up in a 4-3-3 formation with a very good start to the game by both teams, but Japan were edging Spain out when it came to the attacking opportunities at the start of the game, as in the 11th minute Miyazawa netted in from a very good cross to give Japan the 1-0 lead, and in the 14th minute Spain would try to respond with a Ramos opportunity which was unfortunately scuffed to make sure that Spain would still be a goal behind. And just 14 minutes after this attempt, Japan would double their lead after Ueki made a very good shot which just deflected off of Paredes to give Japan the 2-goal advantage going into the rest of the first half. And with Spain being effectively 2 goals down early into the first half, they began to scramble in an attempt to get themselves back to the game, as in the 35th minute, Hermoso would make another attempt at goal, but which would unfortunately just go just wide to keep it 2-0. And in the 39th minute, Japan would make sure to pile on even more misery on Spain, as Miyazawa would strike again to give Japan the 3-goal lead going into the second half. Now, going into the second half and being 3 goals down, Spain must be credited with sticking to their attacking principles and following the orders of Jorge Vilda in playing a tiki-taka style and not just resorting to playing any type of football that would see them get a goal back against Japan. Now, in spite of the resilience by the Spaniards in keeping to their style of play, it was unfortunately a little bit too late for the Spaniards to get themselves back into the game, as Japan's style of play made sure that they were completely dominated and overwhelmed in both attack and defense. As in spite of their best attempts to get inside the Japanese box and get themselves a shot opportunity and probably score, Japan's defensive astuteness made sure that Spain would not get a single sight at goal throughout the entire game. And unfortunately for Spain, when they did concede possession, there would be a very quick transition between defense and attack for Japan, which would lead to a very strong and lethal counterattack that would see Japan score a 4th goal in the 82nd minute, where Tanaka, just like Miyazawa in the 39th minute, would go for top bins and score after beating 2 defenders to make the score 4-0 to Japan, and ultimately end the game being 4-0 to Japan. Now, looking at this game, it is highly evident that between Spain and Japan are the better equipped team to handle the knockout stages of the Women's World Cup year, as not only did they finish top of the group, but they dealt out a very strong hammering to Spain, who, when it comes to the way they played on the pitch, were the more dominant side when it came to dominating possession and attack opportunities. But when it comes to the simple facts of the scoreline, Japan were easily the most effective and deadliest team on that pitch today. And the lack of possession and attacking opportunities is not a slight on the Japanese women here, but rather it is a very good marker to show that they are one of the best teams at this year's World Cup, as they don't need any of those 2 particular statistics in their favor to deliver a very heavy punishment on their opposition, as shown by this game against Spain. And going into the knockout stages of the Women's World Cup, it is very evident to see that between Japan and Spain, Japan are the clear favorites who can do anything against any opposition put in their place, as long as they stick to their style of counter-attacking football and very strong defensive actions. Whereas for Spain, it is a bit more worrying given that they were handed a very heavy defeat here by the Nadeshiko, and it's a matter of Jorge Vilda and his team going back to the drawing board and seeing what went wrong, which in my opinion is a simple situation where when they are granted opportunities to go for goal, they did not take them full on, and that when they were faced against a strong opposition with a very tighter defense, they just had no way of unpicking it. So that is something that must be addressed by the Spanish team, and hopefully as they go into the knockout stages, whoever their opponents are, they have the capacity to learn from this defeat and give a good account of themselves in the knockout stages of the World Cup. Now over to the final game of Group C action, we had Costa Rica taking on Zambia, with Costa Rica lining up in a 3-4-3 formation and Zambia lining up in a 4-1-2-3 formation. And Zambia got off to the races very quickly, as just in the 2nd minute, Wayemba scored from a volley from a corner opportunity to give Zambia not only the first goal of their Women's World Cup journey, but also the fastest goal of the tournament so far. And And from this point forward, Costa Rica were completely on the back foot and were struggling to contain the Zambian attack, as in the 38th minute, Barbara Banda was awarded a penalty after she was dragged down in the box, which she coolly converted to give Zambia the second goal of the game, and for Banda herself, a little piece of history, as she would be the recipient of the 1000th goal of the Women's World Cup since its inception. So that would be a very good congratulations to Barbara Banda on that achievement. And going into the rest of the first half, Costa Rica would start to slowly come back to life, as in the 42nd, a very strong header by Villalobos would just go narrowly wide, and in the 3rd minute of extra time, Del Campo would have a very close attempt saved by Musonda, as the first half would end 2-0 to the Copper Queens of Zambia. And Costa Rica would follow Zambia's example of starting the half very strongly, as in the 46th minute of the second half, Herrera would finally pounce on a loose ball from a set piece to score for Costa Rica and pull them 1 goal up against Zambia to make it 2-1, and just a few minutes later she would seemingly score to level the tie, but unfortunately her second goal attempt would be ruled offside. And for the rest of the second half of the game, it was Costa Rica who were mainly in the driver's seat, as they were playing with so much confidence, as exemplified in a 5-minute period during the 73rd and the 77th minute, where Costa Rica had so many numerous attempts at goal to try and pull themselves back up on level terms with Zambia, but unfortunately the shots would either go wide or would be blocked or saved by Musonda. So it was a very good account of the Zambian defense here, especially in these 5 minutes. But for Musonda as well, coming back off her suspension, it was a very good return to form for her as well. And finally, in the 2nd minute of added time, Zambia would put the game to rest, as Kutanaji would score off the back of a very well-timed pass from Banda to give the Zambians the final 3-1 victory in the last match of Group C, as the Copper Queens and Costa Rica do, unfortunately, as mentioned in the previous video, bow out of the FIFA Women's World Cup. Now, even though both Zambia and Costa Rica have been eliminated already from the Women's World Cup, looking at this match, both teams do have the capacity to continue growing and developing beyond their current status here. It all just really depends on the support that they receive from their respective federations, as I do believe that based on the performance on this game alone, Zambia have the potential to become a heavyweight within African women's football, and Costa Rica has the opportunity to get themselves to become a more efficient and more technically proficient and profound team, which just really needs to be polished off, as they have some very good individual players who can really influence the national team at future regional and international tournaments. So hopefully both of these teams can receive the necessary support that they need to get themselves to the next stage, where they're able to compete with the likes of Spain and Japan at future World Cups. The next 2 matches of the day saw a lot of Group B action, as it started off simultaneous with Ireland versus Nigeria and Canada versus Australia, but we will start off with Ireland versus Nigeria here, with Ireland lining up in a 5-4-1 formation and Nigeria lining up in a 4-2-3-1 formation. And going into this match, Nigeria only needed a draw or a win to qualify themselves for the round of 16 knockout stage of the Women's World Cup, with Ireland already having been eliminated in their previous match. And the Irish girls in green replicate the beginning of their match against Canada, as they came forward with a huge flurry of heavy attacks here, with the closest being a shot from Katie McCabe, who else but McCabe at this rate, just going slightly wide of Nadozi to give Nigeria a goal kick. But it did show that Ireland, even though they were down and out when it came to qualifying for the round of 16 stage, they were not going to go down without a fight. And a fight it would be throughout the entirety of the first half and the second half, and the goalkeepers were on full duty, as Nadozi herself saved a very close header from Caruso in the 36th minute, and Brosnan, who was the player of the match for this game here, ended up saving a very crucial shot after a strong header opportunity by Kanu to make sure that the scores would still remain 0-0. Overall, both teams would leave it all on the pitch, as is exemplary of Nigeria and Ireland's styles of play, but unfortunately at the end of the full 90, it was 0-0, with both teams sharing the points here, with Nigeria qualifying for the round of 16 here, and Ireland, as I mentioned before, bowing out of the Women's World Cup. But thankfully they won't go empty-handed. They do leave with a point, which is better than nothing in the grand scheme scheme of things. And though they were eliminated very early in the stages of the World Cup here, Ireland must be very proud of the performance that they put in. They had a very strong showing against all three of their opponents, who are, comparatively speaking, much more seasoned veterans when it comes to competing at the Women's World Cup. And it is very commendable that they did so much in such a short space of time. And hopefully, just like Costa Rica and Zambia, they can benefit from some very strong investment from their federation, as they do have a high ceiling when it comes to the potential of that entire team, even when the likes of O'Sullivan and McCabe have eventually retired from international football. So all the best to Ireland going forward in their footballing endeavors on a regional level and of course on a World Cup level. The final game of the day would undoubtedly be a box office smash as Canada faced off against Australia, with the Canucks lining up in a 4-2-3-1 formation and the Matildas lining up in a 4-4-2 formation. And even though they were unaware of the scoreline when it comes to the Nigeria vs Ireland game, it was still all to play for Canada and Australia, given that both games kicked off at the same time here, with a win for either side guaranteeing a spot in the knockout stages here, regardless of what would happen in the Nigeria versus Ireland game. And it would be Canada's inability to start the game off well, as evidenced in the games against both Nigeria and Ireland, that would prove to be the costly mistake, as only in the 9th minute of the game, Rasso would pounce on a loose ball and slot home to give the Matildas the early lead in this match. And this would serve as the turning point of the entire game, as for the rest of the first half and going into the second half as well, Canada never got back onto the field as they were overwhelmed by the Matildas, and this is exemplified in the 31st minute, where there's a scramble in the Canadian defense for a loose ball, which Mary Fowler was quick to and scored to make it 2-0, but unfortunately it would be ruled offside after Ellie Carpenter's foot was found to be offside, which in my opinion, when you see the image, is a very stupid foul to call for, but I guess rules are rules for FIFA. But thankfully for the Matildas, they wouldn't have to wait too long for their second goal, as Rasso in the 39th minute would sneak the ball from a corner opportunity to give the Matildas the 2-0 lead going into the second half of the match. And the Australians would pick up where they left off, as only 12 minutes after the beginning of the second half, it would be Mary Fowler who finally gets her goal, her maiden goal at the World Cup stage, and her first goal after being denied in this game initially by that stupid offside call, and it would make it 3-0 to the Matildas here, who were in completely dominating form. Canada looked completely off the mark, they were overwhelmed, and they looked like they were ready to go home, which they would eventually end up doing. And it would not be, unfortunately, before the second minute of added time, where Australia would be gifted a penalty after a stomp in the box on Gorey, which was promptly dispatched by Steph Catley to make it 4-0 to the Australians at the end of the game. And just like Japan, the Australians are looking like heavy favorites going into the knockout stages of the World Cup, especially considering their form in the group stages here, where they came away with 2 wins and a draw. Admittedly, the first win that they received was very lucky, as they needed a set-piece opportunity to beat the Irish girls in green, but seeing how they performed against Nigeria and seeing how they performed here against Canada, it is very easy to see that Australia would definitely have an enjoyable run in the knockout stages of the Women's World Cup, and hopefully they can do themselves very proud, especially since they are on home soil. And for Canada, it is a very disappointing end to their Women's World Cup campaign, as they were initially considered favorites to leave the group stages and make it into the knockouts here, and a lot of fingers can be pointed in different directions as to where the blame should lie for this very poor performance. And when it comes to looking at their match-based performances, I do still strongly believe that it is their inability to start a game off very strongly, especially exemplified in their game against Ireland, where they were scored against very quickly, and here in this game against Australia, that cost Canada. And of course, their well-documented off-field issues could have played a role in their ultimate failure to qualify out of the group stages here. But hopefully, going forward to a well-earned sit-down between the Canadian Football Federation and the players to discuss the future of women's football in the country, as the players' welfare has been admittedly undermined by the Federation given the well-documented issues as mentioned before. So hopefully something can be agreed upon on that front, and with time we'll be able to tell what is the future of women's football in Canada. And those are the things that we learned from today's games here on match day number 12 of the FIFA Women's World Cup. There'll be some more winding down of group stage action here, as Vietnam take on the Netherlands, Portugal takes on the United States of America, China takes on England, and Haiti takes on Denmark. So that will be very, very good to watch, and there will be lots of coverage on that tomorrow, and we'll see what are the things that we learned from those matches when they have concluded. But other than that, thank you very much for watching today's video. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow.